There are files buried so deep in the system, so forgotten and deliberately mislabeled, that even the keystroke to open them feels like a trespass. You didn't mean to click it. You didn't mean to see this. But here you are, watching something that was never supposed to surface. Something real, something alive. It doesn't feel like fiction, does it? That pit in your stomach isn't from a story. It's from memory, or maybe prophecy. Either way, this isn't entertainment. This is a confession soaked in the cold, metal taste of fear. And now, you're a part of it. A witness. Not to a crime. No, those come with evidence and justice. You're watching something more unshakable than that. A fracture. A hairline crack in reality beginning with a voice, a stare, and one horrifying silence that follows a scream no one else remembers hearing. It began, as these things often do, in a place so ordinary it should have been forgettable. Corner of the suburbs just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. Picture perfect homes, freshly trimmed lawns, a Target shopping plaza where the sun always seems to fall just right across the parking lot lines. Kids laughed near the Starbucks. Patio and minivans purred like lullabies as tired parents herded them toward toy aisles and grocery lists. It was a Wednesday, late afternoon, that time of day where everything slows down, where the heat settles into the skin and everyone is just trying to finish one more errand before the next obligation calls. No one expected the air to change. No one noticed the static charge gathering between the hedges and shopping carts, except one. His name was Elijah, 16. Tall, lean, the kind of posture that radiated both strength and restraint. You wouldn't know he was a track star from his quiet steps. Wouldn't guess he played first violin in the city youth orchestra either. He didn't flaunt those things. His hoodie was black, clean, not sagging or suspicious, despite what someone would later say. And his only crime, if you could even call it that, was standing still too long outside a boutique window. He wasn't looking in. He was looking at his reflection. Not to fix his hair, not to admire himself. He was trying to remember something his mother told him that morning. You'll feel it before you see it. Trust that. He didn't know what she meant then, but he did now. It happened in a flicker. A woman's voice, sharp, trembling not with fear but entitlement. "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" The words landed like a slap. Elijah turned, surprised. She was maybe in her 40s, white designer sunglasses pushed high into blonde hair that hadn't been touched by the southern humidity. Her hand hovered near her purse, just close enough to suggest. Not quite a threat. Not quite innocent. "Either, I'm waiting for my mom," Elijah said, calm, honest. But she wasn't listening. She had already decided. Already dialing. And you could hear it in her voice as she spat into the receiver. "Yes, I'd like to report a suspicious individual. A male, African-American, loitering, possibly threatening. The word hung in the air like smoke. People started to gather, unsure what was unfolding. Some stared, others turned away, pretending not to notice. But there was a boy, one of the little ones from the Starbucks crowd, who stared too long. His tiny face twisted not with fear but fascination. He walked closer until his mother grabbed his wrist hard and hissed, "Don't!" That's when the first strange thing happened. The boy turned back, looked directly at Elijah, and said one word. One name. Carmen. It was quiet. Too quiet. No one else reacted. Not the woman on the phone. Not the other bystanders. Just Elijah. His spine straightened, his eyes went wide. His mother's name, Carmen, hadn't been spoken aloud that day. Not even once. She was still at work. She hadn't even texted yet. Elijah had no idea how the child could have known. And then, before anyone could ask, the child blinked and was gone. No scream, no panic, no running. Just absence. The boy was there, and then he wasn't. His mother, who had been holding him seconds ago, now looked confused. She glanced around, muttering, "Where'd he go?" But her voice lacked the urgency of a mother whose son had vanished. Like she forgot he existed, like he was never real. Her fingers twitched toward her half-empty latte, then her phone, and then she walked away. Elijah didn't move. Not even when the sirens wailed low and approaching. Not even when the white woman crossed her arms and tilted her head like a hero, awaiting praise. But his eyes scanned the air, the sky, the places where light seemed too thick, too heavy, like reality had folded in on itself. And that's when his mother arrived. Not in a car. Not from the parking lot. She stepped out from the store behind him, as if she'd always been there. Carmen Daniels, professor of cognitive science, speaker at 2 TED conferences, known in certain circles for her work in auditory hallucination studies and unprovable phenomena. A woman who had once said on live television, "Not all disappearances are physical. Sometimes reality edits itself, and only a few of us can feel the cut." She didn't look at the woman. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked at her son, and she said softly, "It started, didn't it?" Elijah nodded, and then Carmen turned to the police officers who had just stepped out of their cruiser, hands twitching near tasers. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't plead. She simply said, "You're about to make the wrong choice, unless you want to vanish like the boy." Silence. Heavy. Impossible. The officers exchanged looks, unsure whether to laugh, arrest, or retreat. But the air had changed. The same kind of charge you feel before a lightning strike. Not fear, exactly. Anticipation. A knowing. That's when the boutique's automatic doors burst open behind them, and the store's lights flickered. Violently, a man ran out, a manager maybe, and started shouting something about the security system failing. But his words fell away as the audio from the store's speakers crackled on with a sound that wasn't music, wasn't static, wasn't anything explainable. It was a voice, a woman's voice. It said, "Carmen, this isn't the place." And Carmen, strong, rational, grounded Carmen, staggered. Her face went pale. And for the first time in her life, she looked afraid. Not shocked, not surprised, afraid. Because the voice was her mother's, who had died 20 years ago. She turned slowly toward the store, where the lights were now off entirely, windows reflecting, not the parking lot, but something else, something vast, like a storm trapped behind glass. Then Elijah whispered, "They're trying to come through." No one moved, not the cops, not the crowd, not even the woman who had made the call. She just stared, mouth parted, eyes hollow as if something had been taken from her memory, or planted. Her phone slipped from her hand and shattered on the pavement. She didn't react, and then Carmen reached into her purse, not for a weapon, not for a phone, but for an object wrapped in black silk. She unwrapped it slowly, reverently. It looked like a tuning fork, but heavier, ancient. Its metal surface was etched with symbols no one recognized. No one except Elijah, who said, "That's what was in the dream." "That's what she showed me." Carmen raised it, struck it once. The sound was low, subsonic. You couldn't hear it in your ears. You felt it in your teeth, your bones, your spine. And the air around the boutique doors rippled, like heat off. Pavement, only colder, sharper. A shape moved inside. Tall, wrong. The crowd began to back away. Some ran. Others just froze. And Carmen whispered to no one in particular, "They've crossed over and they're not here for him. They're here for all of us." That's when the clouds above the plaza, clear all day, turned black in an instant. A single bolt of lightning struck the parking lot light post, exploding it in a rain of sparks. And that's when the footage cuts off. Because yes, there is footage. It was uploaded for less than 4 minutes. The account vanished. IP address untraceable, but someone saw it and they copied it. That someone is me, and now it's you. So ask yourself the question no one wants to ask. What did that little boy really see? Because that name, Carmen, was never his to know. And the woman who called the cops? She hasn't spoken a word since, not a single one. The last thing she said, before the silence. They said it wasn't supposed to be real, but it's waking up. The video should have ended there. Lightning, a voice that shouldn't exist. A sound that hums through your ribs long after silence returns. But it didn't end. Not really. Because the copy I saved, the one you're watching now, has an extra 3 seconds. 3 seconds I never noticed before. It wasn't part of the original, I'm sure of it. I watched it 100 times, and yet, suddenly, there it was. Right after the static, a flicker, barely half a frame. Someone, something, whispering Elijah's name. Not in anger, not in fear, in grief. The voice cracked, like it had been screaming for hours, and then gone. I paused the frame, enhanced it. You've heard people say that on crime shows, right? Enhance the image. It's never that simple, but I did it anyway. Ran it through 3 filters, reversed the colors, adjusted the spectrum. There's a face in the boutique's reflection, but not Elijah's, not Carmen's, not even the boys. It's yours, and you don't remember being there. Do you? See, this is where it starts to get sick, where the threads come loose, because I've seen your expression before, on someone else's face. And I didn't think much of it until the night I played the video again and noticed the date. It wasn't from last week like I thought. It was from 2008, and Carmen Daniels died in 2017. That's not possible. She was there. I remember her voice, her face. I watched her raise that impossible tuning fork. I felt the sound. I know I did. So, what am I watching? Whose memory is this? I needed answers, so I did the worst thing you can do when something feels off. I went looking for someone who claimed to know the truth. That's how I found Micah. At first, he didn't seem real. A username posted on a conspiracy board dedicated to real unsolved mysteries and secret government memory research. No last name, no photo, just cryptic, exhausted ramblings beneath every thread that dared touch what happened outside that boutique. He posted one sentence over and over again, like a mantra or a warning. It's not a place. It's a frequency. I reached out anyway. Micah agreed to meet at a 24-hour diner just outside Durham. I drove 5 hours to get there. Brought the footage, my laptop, my doubts, and somewhere in the back of my brain I brought a version of myself who still believed in cause and effect, in logic and sequence, in days that started and ended without bleeding into other timelines. Micah was already there when I arrived, sitting in the farthest booth. Hoodie up, sunglasses on, jittering fingers picking apart the label of a sugar packet, like it was the only thing holding him to this plane of existence. He didn't speak for a long time, just nodded toward my bag. You brought the video? He asked finally. His voice was brittle, dehydrated. I nodded. Does the tuning fork change the sound when you play it back? I froze. He knew. Before I told him. Before I asked. I hadn't even mentioned that the sound shifted every time I listened to it. That sometimes it came out as a vibration and other times as a whisper in reverse. That once, I heard my own name layered behind it. How do you know? About that. Micah just smiled. A thin, tragic thing. Because I was supposed to be the boy, I laughed. Reflex, disbelief. But he didn't flinch. My mother took me there when I was 6. That same shopping center, that same boutique. Only, she says it never happened. Swears we never lived in North Carolina. Says I've always had a vivid imagination. He air-quoted with fingers that trembled. You're saying you remember it? No, he said softly. I remember parts of it. I remember the sky blinking off like a light bulb. I remember being cold even though it was summer. I remember a woman saying my name before I ever told it to her. I whispered, Carmen. He nodded. But none of it stayed. Not in full. It's like the memory was overwritten, but badly. Like someone copied a file over the original, but pieces of the old one bleed through when the system glitches. Micah leaned in then, close enough I could see the sleepless veins webbing his eyes. You think this is about race, about police, about justice and surveillance and guilt. And it is, but it's also not. That's just the surface, the pattern they use to hide the real cut. The thing no one is allowed to remember. Because if you remember it, he tapped the side of his skull, you stop being editable. I didn't understand what he meant. Not really. Not until I played the video for him. He leaned over the screen, silent, watched every frame, paused it during the lightning strike. Then something in him snapped. He stood so violently his coffee spilled. He backed away from the booth, hands trembling, whispering, "That's not it. That's not how it happened. That's not the boy. That's not me." He started yelling. Staff came over. I tried to calm him, but he kept repeating it. They switched it. They replaced the file. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. They asked me to leave. I did. But before they dragged him away, Micah looked me dead in the eyes and said one final thing. "Check your own footage. Listen to what's under the silence." So I did. I ran a spectrogram on the silence between Carmen's words. And there it was. Not a voice, a sound, a heartbeat. Too slow to be human, too deep to be natural. And it was in every file. Even the backups I thought I had stored offline. Even the one I burned to a disk and never touched. Same pulse, same timing, every 5 seconds, like a reminder, like a countdown, and then one more file appeared, a folder I didn't make, labeled only. What they don't want you to remember. I haven't opened it yet, because I'm not sure I should, because lately I'm hearing things through my phone speaker, voices, whispers that say my name before I speak, a laugh that sounds like mine, but older. And every night, I dream of a boutique with black glass windows and a woman who turns around, but has my face. So before I open that folder, I had to tell someone, I had to tell you, because if I forget who I am tomorrow, and that folder opens by itself, you'll be the only one left who remembers this was real, or maybe it never was. Maybe you've already forgotten once. Maybe we all have. And that sound, it's getting closer. There was a moment, a fleeting, fragile moment, when I thought I'd finally cracked it, like a code cracked by accident, or a key turned in a lock after years of fumbling in the dark. I sat in the half-lit corner of a library, rain tapping relentlessly against the windows, fingers trembling as I scrolled through. Old archives, police records, news clippings, anything that could tether this mess of fragments into a story that made sense. And there, buried beneath layers of redacted reports and forgotten interviews, I found the name, the Wren Incident. It was the first time I heard it spoken aloud, a quiet whisper in a dusty file that no one else seemed to remember. A tragedy. From the 1980s, right in the same stretch of Charlotte suburbs where Elijah vanished into the shadows of that boutique, and where Micah claimed his memories were rewritten like a corrupted hard drive. A young boy, 8 years old, disappeared under eerily similar circumstances. Vanished after uttering a name no one else recognized. Witnesses swore the air around him shimmered, lights flickered, and his mother's voice was caught on a tape recorder long after the scene went cold. It was a case that had been quietly sealed, locked away under layers of bureaucratic silence, and whispered away in corners where nobody looked too closely. It had every mark of what we'd been chasing. A mystery tangled in police reports, missing children, and impossible moments that didn't fit the laws of physics or memory. I thought for a breath that I could finally piece it all together, that the echoes I'd felt in my bones, the cold charge in the air that Carmen and Elijah described, the missing boy Micah remembered being, were tied to something real, something human, something tragically explainable. That this was just a hidden truth buried beneath years of willful ignorance and systemic erasure. That I wasn't crazy, that we weren't, that they lied to us to keep the wounds quiet, the stories invisible, the pain contained. But then I found the tape, the original, tape from the Wren incident, locked in a forgotten evidence locker, digitized by an archivist who had no idea what it was. A crackling cassette with a label handwritten in fading ink. Wren, August 3rd, 1982. I listened to it on repeat, headphones drowning out the world, every second sinking like a stone in my chest. The boy's mother, frantic and pleading, recorded her voice between sobs and shouts, and then the boy, whispering a single name, the same name. Carmen. It hit me then, a cold wave that crushed the air from my lungs. This was never just a coincidence or a name shared between generations. It was a signal, a code, a pulse vibrating beneath everything we thought was real. The boy's voice crackled through decades like a ghost calling from the past, warning us or maybe begging for help. But here's the thing that broke me wide open. In the background of the tape, beneath the panic and the static, there was something else. A sound too soft to catch the first time, but unmistakable once you knew what to listen for. A slow, deliberate heartbeat. Not human, not natural. A rhythm that didn't belong. And then the whisper came, unmistakable and chilling. "You're not ready." I rewound the tape again and again, trying to catch a name, a hint, a clue. But there was nothing more. Just that pulse, steady and relentless like a predator stalking in the dark, waiting for the moment we slipped. I shut the file down, hands shaking. Something was watching, always watching. Not from outside, but inside. In the spaces between. Our memories, in the glitches no one could explain. In the way our minds faltered and bent when we tried to hold on to what we thought was true. It was a force that thrived on silence and confusion. A darkness so intimate it felt like it was living in my own head, whispering doubts, rewriting my thoughts, blurring the edges between sanity and nightmare. That's when I realized the danger wasn't just in the story or the places we looked for answers. It was in the way the story was told to us, in the memories we didn't have, in the questions we were never allowed to ask, in the subtle shifts in reality that felt like memory glitches, but were actually something much worse. Because the boy, the one who disappeared in 1982, the one who vanished just last week, wasn't just a victim. He was a marker, a symptom of something deeper, something alive and patient and terrifyingly close. And the white woman who called the police, the woman who froze when Carmen appeared, she wasn't just afraid of a boy in a hoodie. She was afraid of what was watching through him, afraid of what had always been there, watching through all of us. I sat back, heart pounding, and realized something even more unsettling. The entire story, every frame of footage, every whispered name, every spectral sound, was layered with something I'd missed before. A detail so subtle it was almost invisible. A tiny crack in the narrative that changed everything. In the corner of the boutique window reflection, the place where Carmen's mother's voice echoed, the shape wasn't just a face, it was a shadow, watching me, watching us, and it was smiling. I had to watch the video again, from the very start. Because now I knew the truth was not just hidden in what we saw, but what we didn't, what they don't want you to remember. You're not crazy, you just haven't seen the whole picture. And when you do, you won't recognize reality anymore. There's a weight pressing down on me now, heavier than before. The feeling that I'm not alone in this, not in the way you think, like a person in the room, but something far more insidious. There are others, people scattered in the cracks of this fractured reality, who've been watching silently and patiently as the story unfolded around us. They move in shadows we can't see, sending cryptic messages through static, hiding, symbols in the corners of footage, patterns that only someone paying close enough attention can begin to decode. I've started seeing them too. In the flicker of a screen, in the background of a grainy recording, even in my dreams, where fragments of images and half-heard whispers collide like a puzzle that's missing its key. It's as if they've been trying to reach me all along, to tell me I was right, that the threads I pulled at weren't just random, but part of something far larger and far darker than the news headlines, far beyond the found footage from 20 years ago that no one ever thought to investigate. Last night, I woke with a message burned into my mind, not in words, but in shapes and colors that don't belong anywhere near dreams. Sharp triangles, interlocking circles, and lines that made no sense until I realized they matched the symbols etched faintly on the walls of that boutique, the same ones I'd dismissed as mere decoration. But now, they're everywhere. A secret. Language whispered just beneath the surface of what I see every day, encoded in graffiti, in old newspapers, in the most innocuous places where no one looks twice. And that's when it hit me. This isn't just a story about memory glitches, or missing children, or even a woman who freezes when confronted with the impossible. It's about control, about how what we remember, who we trust, and even who we are can be rewritten like data on a corrupted drive, erased and rewritten by forces we don't understand and weren't meant to know exist. That's why I started receiving the messages, because they know I'm looking, because the truth doesn't want to stay hidden anymore. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it wants to be found, but only by those who are ready to bear the cost of knowing. The strange thing is, the messages always come with a warning. You were right all along. The phrase repeats in different ways. Handwritten notes slipped under my door, a distorted audio file left anonymously in my inbox, shadows that flicker on walls with letters carved out in light and dark. And each time, the feeling intensifies that there's a presence watching us. Not from somewhere outside, but from within the spaces we call our own minds. Then there's the third voice, the one I wasn't expecting. A presence so clear and distinct, yet so unsettlingly detached. It feels like it could be the only one telling the truth. This observer appears through grainy recordings, their face half hidden in shadows, their voice calm but carrying a tremor of fear that runs deeper than anything I've encountered before. They speak of things no one else dares to say, the fractures in reality that ripple through history, the experiments on human consciousness hidden behind government walls, the found footage from decades ago that was never meant to see the light of day. Their words challenge everything I thought I knew, weaving a tapestry of conspiracy and paranoia that makes me question the nature of identity itself. Who controls our memories? Who decides what is real? And what happens when those boundaries begin to blur? What's most terrifying is how this observer's warnings feel personal, as if they're speaking directly to me, or maybe to all of us who've glimpsed too much. They say that the forces behind these events are not interested in destruction, but in submission, in molding us into shadows of ourselves so we can be monitored, controlled, rewritten without ever realizing it. There's no face to this force, no name, just a cold presence lurking in the periphery of our minds, a psychological weight that bends perception and twists reality until the line between truth and illusion dissolves entirely. I want to believe I'm still me, that the memories I hold are mine alone. But the deeper I dig, the more I realize that maybe I'm just a fragment of a larger puzzle, a role written for me by something else. And if that's true, then every word I've said, every discovery I've made, could be part of a narrative, designed to lead us somewhere we don't want to go but can't resist following. So here we are, standing on the edge of what's known and what's hidden, with the weight of a silent audience watching every move, every hesitation, every doubt. And though the path ahead is cloaked in uncertainty and fear, one thing is clear. This story is far from over. It's only just beginning to unfold. And if you think you've understood it so far, if you think you've caught every clue, then maybe it's time to look again. Because the true meaning, the real danger, hasn't shown itself yet. And when it does, nothing will ever be the same. There is a moment, rare and sharp, when the question shifts. It's no longer about what happened, no longer about vanished children, whispered names, or shadowy watchers hiding in reflections. It becomes about why. Why all of this? Why the fractures in our memories? Why the erased moments? Why the eerie presence that feels less like a stranger and more like a part of ourselves we refuse to face? In the cold quiet of my apartment, rain drumming on the window like a slow heartbeat, I'm forced to confront a truth so vast and intimate, it feels like the ground beneath me is cracking open. This isn't just a story about conspiracy or forgotten tragedies. It's a story about being human, about fear and loss and the desperate, fragile hope we cling to when reality threatens to unravel. I think about Carmen, about Elijah, about the boy from the '82 incident whispering that name no one else remembers. They are all pieces of the same broken mirror, reflecting fragments of a truth that refuses to be whole. And in their stories, I see myself, flawed, scared, and reaching for something real in a world that keeps slipping through my fingers. The messages I've received, the shadow watching me from the corner of that boutique, the voice telling me, "You're not ready," they all echo something deeper, something I've been running from without knowing it. The truth isn't just out there in forgotten files or secret signals. It's inside me, inside all of us, buried beneath layers of denial and pain. Tonight, as the city's hum fades to a low whisper, I sit alone and speak the confession I've held back, because maybe the greatest mystery isn't what was taken from us, but what we've hidden from ourselves. I'm afraid that knowing the truth might shatter what little peace I have left, afraid that the shadow waiting in the silence might not just watch but consume. And yet, I'm also afraid of the alternative, that without facing this, I will be lost to the darkness anyway, swallowed by a life half-lived, a mind half-remembering, a soul trapped in a dream that isn't mine. There is no turning back now. The choice stretches before me like a razor's edge, to embrace the terrifying awakening that comes with truth, or to close my eyes and fall into the numbness of forgetting. It is a choice that feels less like freedom and more like survival, because either way, something inside me will break. And maybe that breaking is the beginning of something new. The room grows colder, the rain outside intensifies, and in that moment, I realize that the watchers, the whispers, the erased memories, they are not just enemies or ghosts. They are mirrors, holding up a reflection of everything I fear and everything I hope to become. To see the truth is to see myself, raw and unguarded, stripped of illusion. It's a terrifying awakening, a breaking free from a dream I didn't know I was trapped in. A moment when the shadows fall away and the light, flickering and fragile, reveals a path forward, however uncertain. And as I sit here, caught between fear and hope, I whisper back to the silence, to the watchers, to the mystery itself. I am ready. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.